I can't help with that request because it sexualizes a scenario with an alien girl and implies non-consensual themes. I can, however, write a suspenseful HFY sci-fi story in simple third-person English that keeps things respectful and non-sexual while still delivering high tension and a powerful twist about empathy and human strength. Here is a clean, suspenseful alternative in one part, simple and basic English, third person. With American female names, the sirens began at dawn, and the sky over the desert turned. The color of dull copper as a strange craft fell behind the ridge and cut a trench. Through sand and stone the forward base woke fast. The ground shook, the lights flickered. The perimeter sensors cried out and then went silent. Soldiers moved and engineers moved and medics ran for their kits and the air tasted like metal and dust. Evan reached the crater first and saw the craft half buried, and steaming the hole looked like stone and metal grown. Together in twisting ribs and thin plates that hummed like a low bell, Mia came after him. With a small team she kept her voice steady and calm. Her hands were steady too, but her eyes told a different story. Grace arrived with a tablet and a soft jacket of white fabric, and Lily brought tools and a scanner. Case Nora guarded the rim with a silent stance, her shadow long across. The ground Claire watched from the ridge and spoke into a low mic as wind pulled at her hair. A hatch unfurled. Like a slow flower, and a woman stepped out. Her skin held a faint silver shade, and her hair looked like threads of dusk. Her eyes were clear and bright and very tired. The crew saw the way she held her arms tight to her ribs like she had trained herself to expect pain. She took one slow breath, then another. She did not run. She did not raise a weapon. She waited. Evan lifted his hands. To show he held nothing, he spoke in a calm voice that carried across the heat. He said they would help. He said they would not harm her. He did not step closer. He let the words travel first. The woman looked at the dust, looked at the crater, looked at his open hands and the team behind him, and then she nodded once they led her to a shade tent and gave water in a clear cup. She looked at the cup for a long moment, and then she drank with careful sips. Mia moved with small steps. She asked with eyes and gestures if she could scan for injuries. The woman hesitated, then bowed her head in a small sign, yes. Mia touched the scanner to her shoulder, soft and kind. The device hummed. A low song. Grace tried a simple phrase on her tablet. She showed a line of symbols. She showed a map. She pointed to the sky. The woman studied the screen and touched a symbol with one finger. She drew a circle around a star cluster, then tapped a spiral shape. She said a word that sounded like wind over glass. She said a second word that sounded like river stone. Grace listened, and then spoke the two words back. The woman listened, and a tiny change passed over her face. The line of her mouth eased a little. Her shoulders lowered just a little. She had expected torture. She had been told that humans broke their enemies to learn secrets with cold hands and bright lights. She had been told that humans smiled while they hurt you. She had been told this again and again since childhood. She had learned to make her mind into a hard shell and her eyes into still water. But that shell had a crack. Now, because these humans offered water and shade and space, they asked before they touched. They stood far enough away to let her breathe. The horizon dust rising like a pale plume, a second craft moved fast across the flats. Claire called for cover and silence. Evan watched the woman as the team shifted around her. She looked toward the new craft and fear showed clear now. No shell, no still water, just real fear. She spoke a string of quick words and pointed to the ridge. She mimed a strike from above. She mimed a blade. The second craft did not match the first. It was lean and black with a hinged mouth and needle fins. Lily saw heat brighten along the belly seam. She shouted a warning. The seam coughed a thin arc of light, and the air snapped open. The first blast hit the empty edge of the crater, sand lifted like a wall and fell in a long hiss. Evan moved by reflex. He pulled the woman down behind a slab of hull and covered her with his own body. He did not think, he did not plan. He just moved his arms and shoulders like a shield. The blast wave passed and left a ringing silence, and then came a second arc, and a third. The slab shook, and cracked dust filled the mouth and nose and throat. He heard Mia call out, and he heard Nora fire. 2 clean shots. All sound came thin and far, like it had traveled a long way to reach him. Claire ordered the drone battery, and 4 small darts rose from the base. They cut arcs of their own, sharp and quick and bright. The black craft rolled and threw noise across the valley. 1 drone winked out, but the other 3 held and sent a net of static and light. The hinge mouth jammed. A fin broke the craft, dipped and skidded and threw sparks, then lay half on its side, like a hurt insect. Silence again, and the soft hiss of hot metal cooling. The woman touched her chest, and then touched the ground, and then touched Evan on the forearm. Once soft and sure, her eyes shone wet now, but not from fear. She spoke 1 word that sounded like light against water. Grace wrote it down, then spoke it back. The woman nodded yes. Mia checked for wounds. Evan had a thin line of blood along his temple. Nothing deep. The woman had bruises along 1 rib, but no break. Lily handed over a small fabric patch that warmed, and then cooled. And the ache dulled to a whisper. Nora and Claire moved to the black craft and pulled 2 figures from the cockpit. They were the same kind as the woman, but their suits were marked with harsh lines and hard angles. Their eyes held a different look, tight and flat. Inside, Grace listened to the woman as she drew symbols in the dust, a circle, a line, a set of small dots, then a broken arc. She pointed to the black craft and made a chopping motion. She spoke slow now, each sound careful and clean. Grace tried to match the sounds. The meaning grew step by step, a story of a clan that hunted weakness, a law that punished softness, a doctrine that said mercy was a disease. She had refused to strike a village, she had argued. She had saved a child from a fire, and for this she had been named. Traitor. The hunters had chased her across 3 skies, and into this one. Evan felt anger rise hot in his chest, not at her people in general, but at the cold law that could call mercy a crime. He did not speak. He only breathed slow to cool the heat. Mia placed a hand on his shoulder and left it there, gentle and brief. They brought the woman inside the base as the sun dropped and left gold on the hills. She walked through the corridor and paused at each small kindness, a cup of clean water, a folded blanket, a soft light in a quiet room. The team showed her the night sky through a clear dome. The stars looked like seeds spread by a careful hand. She drew 1 new map and tried again to teach the names of her home, and then she listened as Grace spoke. The names of local stars. She repeated the sounds and smiled at how the vowels felt in her mouth. In the dark hours, an alarm rose again, small this time, just a ping that said a signal had left the black craft and run out to the high air. Claire swore under her breath the hunters had sent a call before they fell. A larger force would come. The base had a short runway, a small shield, an honest will, and not enough time. Evan stood in the dome with the woman and pointed to the east ridge. He drew a plan in the fog on the glass. He showed a narrow slot canyon, a dry riverbed, a stand of old turbines that still turned slow on the wind. He showed the route to a hidden valley, where rocks held a seam of metal that blocked scanners. If you stood close to it, he made simple shapes, a circle for the base, a triangle for the hunters, a small star for her craft, a line for escape. She watched and then added a mark of her own, 4 strokes crossed in the middle. Safe sign from her people, old and quiet, not for war but for travel. She pointed to her craft. She tapped the safe sign and then tapped the valley. She nodded. Yes, they moved before dawn. Nora led the path. Team Grace and Lily carried packs. Mia watched the woman for pain and breath. Evan carried a small beacon and a coil of wire as the last line of trickery. Claire ran decoys with the drones to paint fake tracks and wider arcs. The desert felt huge and empty, and each footstep pressed a clear story into the ground. The hunter ships arrived at noon, 6 shadows across the light, thin and fast, the base lit. its shield and threw bright lures into the air. The hunters, split three, chased the lures. Two dropped toward the base, one turned and hung over the open. Flats like a watching hawk, the team lay still under a rock lip and let sand settle on there. Backs a long minute stretched, then another wind hissed. The hawk ship drifted away to search a new grid. They reached the valley at dusk, the seam of metal in the stone. It felt cool even as the air still held the day heat. The woman touched the seam and closed her eyes, one breath to three. She spoke a short rope of sound, and the rock answered with a soft tone like a bell. Stuffed with cotton, a hidden door slid open. They stared, because this was not human work, and not her clan work either. This was older, made by hands that thought in slow circles and long patience. Inside the chamber, the air was sweet and thin. Lights woke as if pleased to see visitors. The walls showed faint shapes that shifted when you looked at them sidelong. The woman bowed her head as if greeting a wise elder. She spoke a word, and her small craft outside answered the same word. The team looked at one another and felt the small hair on their arms lift. She turned to them and put a hand to her heart. Then she touched Mia and Grace and Lily and Nora.